Ethan never expected that a quiet Sunday afternoon would flip his entire life upside down. He was simply helping his mother-in-law clean out the dusty attic when a worn cardboard box slid open at his feet. Inside was a wedding album wrapped in yellowed tissue paper, as if someone had tried to hide it rather than store it. He opened it without thinking, and the first photo made his breath stop. Lauren, his wife, stood in a white dress, smiling at a man Ethan had never seen before. The date printed on the page was 2 years before Ethan ever met her. For a moment, the attic felt smaller, the air heavier, as if the walls themselves knew a secret he didn't. A sudden chill ran through him when a single thought formed in his mind. If this marriage was real, then his own might not be. Ethan sat in the living room, holding the album in his lap, waiting for Lauren to walk through the door. When she finally stepped inside, smiling casually and dropping her keys on the counter, he felt a knot twist in his stomach. He didn't speak right away. Instead, he opened the album to the first page and placed it gently on the coffee table. Lauren froze the instant she saw it. Her face drained of color, and for a moment she looked like she might faint. Ethan asked one simple question, but his voice was shaking. "Who is Marcus?" Lauren's lips parted, but no sound came out. Then she rushed forward, snatched at the album, and tried to shut it as if closing the cover would erase the truth. Ethan held her wrists to stop her. "Did you marry him?" he asked again, slower this time. Lauren started crying almost instantly, her shoulders shaking, tears streaming down her face. She said it was complicated. She said she meant to tell him. She said she thought the past didn't matter anymore. But none of her excuses answered the question he needed most. "Are you legally divorced?" This time, Lauren didn't say anything. She wiped her nose with the back of her hand and stared at the floor. The silence told Ethan everything. He felt his chest tighten, a mix of anger, confusion, and betrayal twisting in him. Lauren finally whispered that she and Marcus had separated years ago. She insisted it had been over emotionally, that she had moved on, that the relationship was dead long before Ethan ever came into the picture. But when he pressed, she admitted she had never signed the divorce papers. She claimed she forgot. She claimed she didn't want to deal with the lawyers. She claimed she was waiting for the right moment. Ethan couldn't believe what he was hearing. 7 years together, and she never once mentioned that she was still legally bound to another man. His hands trembled as he tried to put the pieces together. Their wedding, their mortgage application, their joint tax returns. All of it suddenly looked like a web of lies. Lauren tried to touch his arm, begging him to listen. She said she panicked. She said she didn't want to lose him. She said she thought that if enough time passed, Marcus would file on his own and the problem would disappear. Ethan pulled away. He felt sick thinking about what this meant legally, and even sicker thinking about what it meant emotionally. The woman he trusted had lied every single day of their marriage. Lauren dropped to her knees, sobbing and grabbing at his hands. She asked him not to leave. She asked him to forgive her. She blamed stress. She blamed confusion. She blamed her family. But Ethan heard none of it. All he could think was that the life he had built was not real. The marriage certificate hanging in their bedroom could be meaningless. And the woman crying in front of him might not be the person he thought he knew. Lauren's crying shifted so quickly, it almost startled Ethan. One moment she was trembling, whispering apologies, and the next her voice snapped into sharp frustration. She stood up, wiped her tears, and glared at him as if he were the one who had betrayed her. She said he was blowing everything out of proportion. She said people make mistakes. She said it wasn't like she cheated. Ethan stared at her in disbelief, unable to understand how she could twist the situation so boldly. When he told her the truth mattered, her anger simmered into something colder. She asked if he really planned to punish her for something that happened before him. He told her again that the issue wasn't the past. It was the fact that she lied for years. Lauren's expression softened instantly, shifting back into desperation. She stepped closer, touching his chest, begging him to calm down. She said she could fix it. She said she would sign whatever papers he wanted. She said no one had to know. But Ethan could see fear behind her eyes. Not fear of losing him, fear of consequences. He asked her when she realized that not being divorced made their marriage invalid. She hesitated for too long. Then she admitted she had figured it out early on. She said she hoped the issue would solve itself. She said she thought if she ignored it long enough, Marcus would take care of it. Ethan felt the floor tilt under his feet as her words hit him. She had known. For years. And she had chosen silence every single day. Lauren tried to defend herself by saying she was scared. She said the paperwork overwhelmed her. She said her family pressured her into appearing perfect, and admitting the truth would have made her look irresponsible. Ethan's voice cracked as he asked her if she understood that he could be dragged into legal trouble because of her decisions. She blinked in confusion, like she hadn't even considered the possibility. Then panic flooded her face as she realized what he meant. She said no, one would blame him. She said she would protect him. She said she would take all responsibility. But Ethan didn't believe her, not after hearing how easily she hid the most important information of her life. Hours passed as they argued, cried, and went in circles. Lauren's emotions spiraled wildly, defensive one second, furious the next, collapsing into apologies moments later. In a final moment of weakness, she confessed everything. She said she was afraid he wouldn't want her if he knew she came with problems. She said she told herself the lie was harmless. She said she convinced herself that Ethan didn't need to know. He listened, but his heart felt distant, like it was slowly detaching to protect itself. Her confession didn't feel like honesty. It felt like the last piece of a long, calculated deception. For 7 years, she let him live in a marriage that wasn't legally real. For 7 years, she let him sign documents under false pretenses. For 7 years, she watched him love her without once giving him the truth. When Ethan finally rose from the couch, he felt like a stranger in his own home. He looked at Lauren, still sobbing on the floor, and realized something he never thought he would. The person crying wasn't the victim. He was. Ethan woke up the next morning with swollen eyes and a headache that felt like it came from somewhere deeper than his skull. He hadn't slept. He had spent the entire night replaying every moment of their relationship, trying to figure out when the lies began and whether anything had ever been real. By sunrise, he knew he couldn't face this alone. He needed legal advice. He needed protection. So he called a lawyer. The attorney listened carefully as Ethan explained everything. The wedding album. The confession. The years of silence. When Ethan finished, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then the lawyer told him the truth Ethan had been terrified to acknowledge. If Lauren was still legally married to Marcus, then Ethan's marriage was invalid. And worse, he could be connected to fraud without even realizing it. Taxes, insurance, property documents, anything they had filed as a married couple could now be questioned. Ethan felt sick as he thanked the lawyer and scheduled an in-person appointment. When he got home, he found Lauren sitting on the couch, looking exhausted but strangely expectant. She rushed toward him as soon as he walked in, wrapping her arms around him as if nothing had happened. He gently pushed her away. He told her he was meeting with a lawyer. Her expression cracked instantly. A shiver of panic crossed her face before she tried to plaster on a fragile smile. She told him there was no need. She claimed they could figure it out together. He told her again that he was going. Within an hour, she shifted from pleading to attacking. She accused him of overreacting. She said only weak men needed lawyers. She said he was trying to punish her instead of helping her fix the mess. When her insults didn't work, she changed tactics. She grabbed his hand and begged him not to tell her family. She said they would be devastated. She said they would blame him for making everything worse. But before Ethan could respond, his phone buzzed. It was Lauren's mother. Her voice was tense, demanding to know why Lauren had called crying about him being cruel and heartless. Ethan froze. She had already twisted the story. He hadn't even left the house yet, and she had framed him as the bad guy. By evening, Lauren's relatives filled his message inbox with guilt-tripping texts. They said marriage was about forgiveness. They said real men protect their wives. They said mistakes happen, and only stubborn people cling to paperwork. Not one person asked how he felt. Not one person questioned why Lauren lied for years. That night, Ethan turned off his phone to escape the noise. But Lauren didn't stop. She texted him nonstop, over 200 messages, cycling through every emotional state imaginable. One minute she loved him. The next she hated him. One message begged him to come hold her. The next threatened to leave and take everything with her. Then she apologized. Then she blamed him. Then she threatened again. Ethan sat alone in the dark, staring at the wall as the notifications buzzed relentlessly. With every message, he felt himself inch further away from the life he once believed was stable. He realized she wasn't trying to fix anything. She was trying to control him. And for the first time, he wondered what other truths she had been hiding. Ethan arrived at work early the next morning, hopping for a few hours of quiet before his meeting with the attorney. He needed space to think. He needed distance from the chaos that had swallowed his home. But he barely made it to his desk when he heard hurried footsteps behind him. He turned and froze. Lauren stood in the middle of the office hallway, holding a cardboard box filled with his belongings as if he had been evicted from his own life. Her eyes were red and wild, but she forced a bright, trembling smile. She said she was there to fix everything. She said they needed to talk right now. She said they could go to the courthouse at lunch and get remarried immediately. Several coworkers stopped to stare, unsure whether they were witnessing a reconciliation or a meltdown. Ethan felt the heat rise to his face as he pulled Lauren aside into a conference room. He told her she couldn't show up at his workplace like this. She ignored him and slammed the box onto the table, insisting she brought his things in case he planned to run away again. Then she pulled out a stack of printed forms. She had found templates online and filled in everything except the dates. She told him all they needed to do was adjust the timeline, sign, and pretend their ceremony happened after her divorce was finalized. Ethan stared at her, stunned. She was asking him to commit fraud. She was asking him to lie to the court. When he refused, her desperation cracked. She accused him of abandoning her. She said he was being dramatic. She said couples fix problems, not run from them. When her pleading didn't sway him, her tone darkened. She demanded part of the house they shared. She said she deserved compensation for emotional distress. She said she would tell everyone that he had abused her emotionally and physically if he tried to leave. Ethan felt something cold settle in his chest as her words washed over him. This wasn't fear anymore. It was manipulation, pure and calculated. He told her the conversation was over and tried to walk out. Lauren followed him down the hallway, loud enough for half the office to hear. She called him selfish. She called him ungrateful. She accused him of ruining her life. Ethan's coworkers stared, unsure whether to intervene or pretend they heard nothing. During lunch break, Ethan walked to the parking lot to clear his head. But the moment he stepped outside, he stopped dead in his tracks. His car door was dented. Deep scratches ran across the paint. The mirrors were knocked loose. And next to his tire lay the broken handle of a metal tool. When he looked up, he saw the security camera fixed directly on the spot. Before he could even process what he was seeing, Lauren appeared behind him. She said it was an accident. She said she was angry and lost control. She said he drove her to it. He didn't answer. He simply walked away, shaking, realizing she had crossed a line she couldn't return from. As he stood in the elevator, listening to the doors close, Ethan knew something had changed inside him. This wasn't just about lies anymore. It wasn't even about the illegal marriage. Lauren was becoming dangerous, emotionally, legally, and physically. And for the first time, he understood that the situation was spiraling faster than he could contain. Ethan met with his lawyer the following morning, still shaken from what had happened at work. He brought photos of the damaged car, screenshots of the 200 messages, and a written timeline of everything he had learned. The attorney read silently, his expression tightening with every page. When he finally looked up, his voice was firm. This was no longer a simple marriage issue. It was a legal crisis. He explained that because Lauren was still legally married to Marcus, every document Ethan and Lauren had signed together could now be considered fraudulent. Their joint tax returns, their insurance forms, their mortgage application, even Ethan's workplace benefits could become part of the investigation. The room felt like it was closing in, as Ethan realized the scope of the damage. Lauren's arrest didn't happen with flashing lights or dramatic shouting. It happened quietly on a Tuesday morning when two investigators knocked on her parents' front door and asked her to come with them. Ethan heard about it later that afternoon, when the DA's office contacted him to confirm details of his statement. Even though he had known this moment was coming, his stomach twisted painfully. For years, he had loved her. For years, he had trusted her. And now she was being processed for crimes he never even imagined she was capable of. The charges read like a list of every lie she had ever told. Bigamy, filing fraudulent documents, insurance fraud, tax misrepresentation, identity misuse. Each accusation was a separate reminder that the marriage he thought they shared had never legally existed. Her parents scrambled to hire a defense attorney, insisting Lauren was just confused and never meant harm. But the evidence was overwhelming. The forged signatures, the false filings, the altered dates, the recorded messages, the security footage from Ethan's workplace parking lot. Every piece built a picture the court couldn't ignore. When Lauren appeared for her preliminary hearing, she looked smaller than Ethan remembered, fragile, hollow, and terrified. She glanced around the courtroom, as if searching for someone to defend her. Their eyes met for a brief second. Ethan felt a sharp ache in his chest, but he didn't look away. He needed to see the truth for what it was, not what he once hoped it could be. Lauren's lawyer negotiated aggressively, pushing for leniency. They argued she had emotional struggles. They argued she wasn't a threat. They argued she had been overwhelmed by life and made poor decisions. But the prosecution had stacks of documented evidence stretching back years. There was no way to pretend this was a single mistake. In the end, Lauren accepted a plea deal. 2 years of probation. 200 hours of community service. Fees. Restitution. Mandatory financial oversight. And a permanent record that would follow her for the rest of her life. She lost her job the same week the plea was finalized. Her employer cited ethical violations and loss of trust. The IRS notified her that she owed thousands in unpaid taxes and penalties. Old friends distanced themselves. Neighbors whispered. Online groups discussed her case, turning her name into a cautionary tale. What surprised Ethan most wasn't the punishment, it was the silence from Lauren afterward. She didn't try to call him. She didn't send messages. She didn't blame him publicly. Maybe she understood that the consequences were no longer something she could spin or charm her way out of. Maybe for the first time, she had finally run out of places to hide. A week after the sentencing, Ethan received an unexpected message. It was from Marcus. He thanked Ethan sincerely for coming forward. He said he had spent years feeling gaslit, doubting himself, wondering why his finances never added up. Ethan realized then that exposing the truth hadn't just freed him. It had freed someone else too. Walking out of the courthouse afterward, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in months, air that didn't weigh on his lungs. The damage was still there. The memories still hurt. But the shadow Lauren cast over his life was finally shifting. He hadn't destroyed her life. She had destroyed her own. And now, at last, the consequences were hers to carry, not his. Ethan stood in the quiet hospital corridor, listening to the steady beeping of the monitors behind Lauren's door. He had spent the last 24 hours replaying every moment of their marriage, searching for signs he might have missed, trying to understand how love and fear had become so tangled in her life. When the doctor finally stepped out and told him she was stable, something inside him loosened, as if the weight of the past week had been holding his lungs hostage. He walked into the room and saw her lying there, pale but breathing evenly, her hand resting loosely on the blanket. For the first time since the attic, he didn't feel anger or confusion. He felt the ache of someone who had almost lost the person they loved without ever fully understanding their pain. When her eyes opened, she whispered his name with a trembling apology that carried more truth than any explanation could. Ethan took her hand, not because everything was solved, but because healing had to start somewhere. The past would still need to be faced, but now they would face it together.